Hi there, welcome. This is Casey. In today's video, I will be sharing an at-a-glance iris reading, and this is a more condensed version or summary of an iridology reading. I do offer these at a discount and for educational purposes. And so we have both eyes on the screen. And we have the left eye on the right and the right eye on the left. And where I actually want to start, so what I like to do when I start an iridology reading is just kind of sit back in my chair a bit and just see what features are standing out the most. And while we do have a whole heck of a lot going on in the digestive system, I'm actually going to start my observations on the periphery of the iris because I find this to be very interesting here. And so we have a skin ring. This is a major skin ring, and it is larger in the area of the lungs in both eyes. And this is usually the case. The skin ring is usually more emphasized in the lung area. And we also have with the skin ring, invariably we're going to see a connection to the thyroid, which we will. So we have this skin ring, and then on the outside of that, we have a little bit of, you can see almost like a violet hue. I can see that here in the right eye up at the top. And this is an anemia ring, and anemia rings can be a little bit tricky to spot with the camera, but we are seeing it. And we also have something that I would refer to as a fringe, and it's just sort of this fuzzy haziness, again in the periphery, so even outside of the skin ring. And this area represents, you could think of it as an interaction zone. So this is the area, you could even think of it as your aura or the energy that surrounds your body. And so all of this together, the skin ring, the anemia ring, not so much, but especially with the fringe ring, these would indicate to me more from, an emotional or energetic perspective, the concept of boundaries and who and what is allowed into your space. And so that may be a focus for this person, and especially even from the physical perspective of the role of the skin in encasing and protecting our body from the outside world. All right, so in terms of constitution, we have not a silk type iris necessarily. I would say this is a cotton, if we're using the fabric analogy. And it is still a strong constitution from my perspective. We see a few lacuna here and there, not a whole lot. But we're also seeing a lot of inflammation and a high level of acidity or acidosis. And we're seeing that in the white, and that would be acute inflammation. And in terms of color, we have what German or European iridologists would refer to as a biliary eye, or iris color. And this is just simply a combination of colors, or a mixed color iris. From the American or Jensen perspective, what we're simply seeing is a true blue eye with different shades and layers of colors, all related to different organs and organ systems, and even the fluids of the body and their individual processes, including enzymatic activity and so forth. And what we're seeing in these eyes, it's really interesting because we're speaking to this concept of this iris type that is so-called biliary. And I would say that in this case, that's a really great term for what we're saying. But the fact that, let me finish my thought, because the browns that we're seeing are for the most part related to the liver. We also see brown in more chronic states of lymphatic congestion, and brown in weaker areas of certain organs. But here we're seeing brown primarily related to the liver. And so biliary meaning from bile. But if we had, say, a green eye, that may also be termed biliary, and the green eye would come from yellow pigmentation. Yellow pigmentation can be related to the kidneys, and it can also be related to lymphatic congestion. All right, so what's fascinating to me is that the right eye is almost entirely brown. And I do believe this is coming from stress within the liver. And the liver, funny enough, as it is primarily located in the right side of the body, is also found in the right iris. All right, so we have a strong constitution, some inflammation, the fibers look pretty good. We're going to get into the digestive system. We're seeing a very likely malabsorption here, especially you can see it in the right eye, this pronounced dark area around the pupil. This is an area that reflects the ability of the body to receive nutrients, and in the form of physical nutrition as well as emotional comfort. And so we do see that this is also where you would see gastritis, which is inflammation of the stomach. And that is not something this person has experienced, but it is in one of his parents, I believe, has experienced gastritis as well as acid reflux, and we'll get to that when we look at each eye. So that would be the pupil, the pupillary margin, and then we're just seeing a lot going on in each of these eyes in terms of digestion. So we will get into that. And yeah, I think that may be all for the common features. And now let's go ahead and take a look at each of the eyes. All right, so we have the left eye we're going to look at first, and I want to trace out the bowel wall as best as I can. there are definitely areas, there's a little bit of squaring here in the bowel wall. There are definitely areas where I can't see it. And if I'm not sure, I'm just going to kind of leave it. It looks like we have, it's extended out a little bit further. This would be the descending colon. And then here we have the ascending colon. All right, so let's go ahead and start at the top. Actually, back to digestion. We do have, again, this darkness in the pupillary margin. And overall, the darkness, we can refer to this as central heterochromia, meaning there's a different color and it's in the center of the eye. It also extends up into the head and brain area. We can see this as part of the stress in the liver. We can see it as the digestive system being in a chronic state and thus producing brown color. And the first and foremost area that's affected by malaise within the digestive system is going to be the head and brain area. And so what we see here, this area in here, is the pituitary gland. And then we have just above that the ego pressure, brain zone. And ego pressure has to do with how we pressure ourselves about our goals and dreams for life. And I have I'm going to be pretty brief. Hopefully we can see we can actually make this a shorter reading. I do have descriptions of the brain zones on my website, and I have done a few videos on some as well. And then after that, we have the vitality brain zone being affected. And this is animation life, how inspired we are, and how much actual energy we have to complete our goals and create our dreams. And then after that, we have inherent mental. This one's pretty significant to me as well. It is across from that left adrenal gland. And I drew the bowel wall here just outside, but I still feel like this is connected to the adrenal gland. So I would say that that is showing us a chronic adrenal gland on the left side, and then that the kidney does have, it looks like, some inflammation. So we would have the thymy foot at 6 o'clock. That's about that much of a zone. And then outside of that would be the left kidney. Not a big weakness in the left kidney, but certainly could be some congestion, and it would be in the it would be of the acute nature. All right, and then we have the medulla in this area, and the medulla being very much connected to the vagus nerve, and also connected to the processes of eating, swallowing, breathing, and we're going to be seeing these things come up in these eyes. Okay, and then moving around, definitely could be some acute inflammation in the neck and shoulder area. This is all ear mastoid in there. And then this area is going to be the heart area outside of the bowel wall. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Don't see any distinct markings in that heart area. And then, but we do see a small pigmentation or psora in the lungs. And so psora or pigmentation will often lodge itself into the area of the body that was intended by Creator to remove that toxin or process that toxin. And that's why a lot of times when we see dark brown psora or pigmentation, it's related to the liver. And just because the liver is tasked with alchemizing all of the chemicals and anything else we could hand to our body in the form of toxins. So I think this is, that said, this could be something that is lodged, some kind of toxicity that is lodged within the lung area. And the lungs are one of the body's major pathways of elimination, as well as is the skin. And so, and the emotion associated with the lungs, this is from Chinese medicine, is sorrow or grief. And that's also what they assign to the skin and the large intestines as well. Which is interesting because the heart is the area of joy, and we're in this proximity here. So let's look at this this skin ring in a little bit more detail. We have these little, almost like little lacuna openings in the fibers, accentuating the importance or relevance of this skin ring for this person. And this could be, I believe he had severe acne. Yeah. And so this could be, it could just be a normal, representation of a skin ring that has been worn down quite a lot. It could be, I don't know if there was any medication taken that could be the cause of these little openings. It could also be due to scarring, if there was any scarring. And so you see them kind of throughout. They're fairly continuous throughout the periphery of the iris. All right, and then moving along, we have the rib in showing up in more of a yellowish in this area, so a little bit more chronic than acute. And then the arm, below that, a little bit of inflammation in there. And then we have the sigmoid colon in this area, and just outside of that we have the testes. So you can see there's some emphasis in the in this area of the intestines. The sigmoid colon is the last part of the colon before it moves into the rectum. So we can have a lot of accumulated waste in that area, and that could be affecting this region outside of that, which is the testes. And then I'm just not seeing a whole lot of significant features in here. I want to skip. So we definitely have the kidney, the adrenal gland, the fact that there's a diagonal radial relationship between the adrenal gland and the inherent mental, also known as the anxiety zone. I did check with this person, and he has experienced some anxiety, but handles it really well. So, and I don't know at this point on our planet who isn't experiencing some level of anxiety. So, but I wanted to point that out. That's how we see one of the ways we see anxiety. And then also, I mean, there's several ways, but also mainly in nerve rings, which I'm not seeing any nerve rings, so that's good. Now, this area here is definitely catching my attention. And again, we're looking at the last part of the sigmoid as it transitions into the rectum. So again, more focus on the colon, and especially the sigmoid colon. And I would highly recommend some colon cleansing. And then we also have this interesting marking here that is the low back. So we're looking at the lower back as it is bordering the bladder. All right, and then I want to hop up to one of the more, probably the highlight for me, one of them for this reading is this area right here. This is the esophagus. And I have cropped the photo, but we have a vessel, a blood vessel that comes, it's pretty long, and it points directly at the esophagus. All right, so what is the esophagus and why would it be significant? When we're considering, we've talked about the aura and the interaction and the protecting your space and what you allow into your space. Well, the esophagus is essentially a channel. It's a tube or a channel that your food and liquid travels through between your mouth and your stomach. And it's the source for acid reflux, heartburn, and I believe one or more of those is runs in this one's family, but that he doesn't necessarily experience it on that level. So this is, I would say, most likely an inherited iris marking. And so simply, physically, are you able to stomach what you are putting into your body? And that could be through food on a physical level. Yes, it would be food or drink. It could also be a metaphor for what you're taking in from the world and how well you're able to process that. And so we know that the stomach is a place where a lot of people, it's like, the trash can where we put all the stuff that we don't feel capable of processing, and especially emotional stuff. So I think that this esophagus is rather significant for this person because we're also seeing it in the other eye. And it's showing up strongly in the other eye, just in a little bit of a different nature. So we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so we have the right eye. This eye is almost entirely brown, and this is due to pigmentation coming from the liver, gallbladder perhaps, pancreas perhaps, mainly the liver, and as well as the latter stages of lymphatic congestion. So we have pretty chronic lymphatic congestion going on as well. And let's go ahead and start at the top, or almost at the top. So we have here the mastoid. This is a pretty major radii solaris, and that can have to do with the jaw, potential clenching, things of that nature. We have a small marking here in the medulla, I thought it was significant because we saw the medulla in the left eye as well. And then this marking is in 2 different brain zones. It's just barely in the sexuality brain zone, but even more so in the inherent mental or anxiety zone. So of course, when we did see this in the other eye, we're going to go ahead and draw a radial, and we do see here that I would say chronic adrenal gland, and then more weakness, which doesn't surprise me because this eye seems to be a little bit it's has more challenges, especially with the liver. But I'm also seeing that this kidney may very well be weaker than the left kidney. So this would be the kidney and adrenal gland. And then again, we have the vitality center showing up pretty strongly. And then we have the pituitary and the ego pressure. So same another brain zone that we saw in the left eye, ego pressure, how we pressure ourselves to achieve what we esteem to be an acceptable performance. So when we're hard on ourselves, or we expect a lot out of ourselves, this may be seen, this type of emotion or tendency may be seen in the ego pressure brain zone. All right, and then again, there's a little bit of emphasis in the eye area. I haven't received any intake information on the eyes, so you know, I'm guessing they're very healthy, but they are coming up a bit. All right, and I suppose I should draw this out because it's much darker, the pupillary margin, and we have a lot of emphasis on this little area especially, and what's outside of this area is very important for this eye, for this body, for this person, and that is the pancreas, gallbladder, and liver. So that is significant. This almost like a little bit of flattening, but even if not flattening, just very, very dark in this area of the pupil, and then the whole entire pupil has that dark ring around it. The bell wall, this is interesting. This, I think, is a shadow because I think I can kind of see it in here. Not an easy bell wall. It doesn't mean it's a good or a bad thing to trace out. Sometimes I can't see it at all and I just have to go on shading. That is approximately where I would put the bell wall. Okay. And then this is super fascinating to me. We have coming up again the esophagus. So we have the esophagus here, and we have this pigmentation right in its zone. And so again, the esophagus is the bridge, and I think a key word here would be discernment. What sounds good, looks good, smells good, and probably tastes good, doesn't always end up feeling good. And so, we could sit and contemplate the meaning of the esophagus for a while, right? I'm just gonna state my observations. And then we have the low back in here, and you can see this darkness. Really, we're still in the skin zone, but it is the skin zone of the low back. And this skin zone where we're seeing this weakness in the skin, this is super dark in here, and all these little openings, it's somewhat continuous around the iris, somewhat, but like I said, it's much more apparent in the lung area. Okay, and then cruising along here, I want to show you this area. I think this is really interesting. This is the pancreas, and you can see how it's really a part of the digestive system, and the darkness is coming from the digestive system. So we're seeing that here in the pancreas area, and we know the pancreas secretes enzymes that aid us in our digestion process. So if your pancreas is offline, it's really hard to digest pretty much anything. But I suppose the pancreas would be more related to processing sugars. And then the gallbladder, which we're also seeing here, would be more related to, and the liver, major in that area, would give you trouble digesting fats. So I've made lots of recommendations for healing and detox, so I can't really go into all that here, but it usually comes down to, for me, doing a raw food detox, raw vegan, not necessarily how you would eat for the rest of your life, but how you detox, and eating the simple foods such as fruits and greens, blended smoothies, that kind of thing, salads, things of that nature, lots of fruit, and then see if you can't strengthen your body enough to where it can start at least digesting things a little bit easier. All right, and then we're also seeing this line here is the chest breast line. It's kind of gray there. I don't know, there could be something going on in there. And then just lungs again. I would say that this is still the lung area. And I want to hop up over to the thyroid. The thyroid doesn't look as, it's not catching my attention as much as in the left eye. It wouldn't hurt though, just because the thyroid and the skin being so very connected, the health of the skin you can usually trace back to the thyroid. So you may want to do an underarm basal thermometer test to check the health of the thyroid. And then this area here, it looks like a transversal fiber, so there's going to be some inflammation in this area. This would again be in the neck and shoulder area. So could be some inflammation in the neck and shoulder. All right, I think that's it for this express reading, and thank you for joining us. Let me know if you have any questions, and until next time.